Welcome everybody on this Circon session. It's very nice to see you on being here, attending, and more of you coming in. So today's topic would be about the data migration, which always is a critical step in the business transformation. And we are in the 21st century, so I believe that it's time to talk about it, how to make it smart, seamless, and ideally scalable. So a little bit about myself. My name is Frantisek Slepanek. I'm the team leader of delivery and service development in Columbus. I'm situated in Prague, Czech Republic, in Europe. But it's my pleasure to be within your time zone because here it's sunny and during the day, and right now there's an evening, a lot of snow, so there is still nothing to do outside because we are not near the mountains. So I'm very happy to be here on the webinar instead. What we will do is that we will go through approximately 40 to 45-minute session. You can ask questions during the session, as Lauren mentioned in the venue chat. It will be responded in the chat, or we will address them live if time allows, or we will respond to all of them later after in the email communication. If you run out of time from some reason and you would like to still discuss specific setup, you can see my email next to the presentation on the slide, and you can contact me directly. The recording will be available after the webinar, so I believe if you miss anything, there is always a situation to go back and forth through it. So saying this, welcome to this webinar, and I'm very happy to be your presenter for today. A little bit about the Columbus. The Columbus is the largest independent Infor M3 partner in the world. We are having more than 300 consultants globally, more than 20 years of average time of experience, covering 24/7 applications management, and having more than 350 customers worldwide. Will be also present on the Muga conference, and I will be there also physically. So if you'd be interested to continue any discussion regarding data migration in person, I'll be very happy to meet you there, and I will be there with the Columbus stand. But without any ado, let's go for the topic of the day. And I would like to start the presentation with a quote. 21st century, 2026, we don't need a spreadsheet. And the spreadsheet is something which I know has been a golden standard for many, many years, but I believe that it's something when we want to move around for more complex migrations, more complex systems, more complex companies, we need to get rid of these. And I would like to talk about a little bit how we see the data as a challenge, and where we see also the data as an added value to the whole process. I will try to give you today a little bit more experiences how we work on this problematic and how we are also helping our customers to try to explore this new way of thinking, how to work with the data. And how I would like to really start is that the mapping. The mapping is the very first thing to understanding what your data represents. What value does it have for the business, and what value does it have for the users and the people who work with it? And the data seems to be abstract, but it's not. And when we try to draw the comparison to the physical objects, I really like a quote from the founder of the Microsoft. And if you look at the Bill Gates, he said he wanted to represent to the people what really data means. And he did in a way that there was in 1994 a very nice commercial about showing how many papers are being represented when piled one on top of each other and can be stored on one CD. And the result was quite nice. There is a very famous picture when he's hanging 16-meter high above the two piles of papers which are next to each other. And that's basically what represents the data of one CD. So I believe that helping to representing something abstract to something which is really physical and able to grab for the users is really good, because if you would take this as a point, then the average size of the ERP database is basically the equivalent of 5,000 trees or 2,500 minimans. So all of a sudden you see that your data is not abstract. It really represents a huge amount of volume that is running your company and running your system, and the people are really working every single day, which means they are really significant. And through the whole ERP projects and implementations, I see that the companies are really being focusing on, we want to get the new processes, we want to get the new features, we want to have the new system. But also you need to keep in time the data are not the same in the old system and the new system. And this means that the input is really important, because knowing the context of the data, it means that same data can mean different things depending on the context and the input. So What I did, and I had a lot of fun last year with this, is that when the AI generative tools and everything has been still, let's say, a little bit student-ish, and the input was really important, I believe it still represents very nicely what the data can represent. Because if I took one model and I put there the input, I want to have apple. So the model generated an apple, which is kind of a quite straightforward. Then I took second model and I said, okay, what if I want to generate an apple? Looks like the same, but all of a sudden I got an orchard of not apples at all. These are pears. And then I was thinking, okay, so what will happen if I will put to another generator the apple? And I believe some of you knows where this leads, and we have been kind of a one bite away from having an apple to being the largest technology company in the world. And this is what we say, that the input really matters, because the data during the migration can have a very huge impact on the quality, how you're using the future system and the future business processes. Because in one system it's an apple, in the other system it's an apple which is red, which is mid-sized, which is being on the table, and which is having a glossy color. So there's multiple inputs which you can have with a very single item. It can provide a different value. The second thing we also want to keep in mind is that the output really matters as well. And you need to know where and how to move the data. So if the input is the source, the output is the target. And sometimes the same results can be achieved by different methods. But not all the methods are suitable to achieve a different results. What it means is that if your database is really small, and for example, you need to copy paste one record, you can do it by hand. That's quite easy. Sometimes it's not even uh, beneficial to take something very sophisticated. But if you need to move 1,000 records, well, spreadsheet, there you go. Which means that 1,000 records is a little bit more complex, but it's still not that complex that you can't do it in a manual way. But imagine that you are having a million records. You don't want to manage million records with the spreadsheet. You don't want to manage million records by hand. And that's exactly what was happening in the past decade, that we tried to go and resolve the size, the complexity, and everything which is going around the database with the same tools, which were not suitable for the same and new process. And that's the difference where we try to educate a little bit more, and that's where I believe that is the strength of the future we want to go together. Because the data migration is complex, it's not a drag and copy. It's not that you take an apple and move it to the new system and you are done. I believe most of you who have been through the M3 world for some time knows with the different versions and with the different ERP setups, you can achieve different business outputs. And what I also want to stress out, that you have the ERP implementation and you have the data, but what I see is that behind every ERP implementation, right, the four tech horsemen of the apocalypse. Well, technically, this year I would add the fifth, but I would like to talk about it in a minute. And the reason is that even though you have the data, it basically influences everything. It influences the way you do about your data quality, how you manage the integrations, how you manage the output management, and the importance goes beyond the business process needs. So even though you have a data which are fine for the testing or delivering the prototype of the business process in the new system, they might not be very suitable for output management, where there is a running show and the output management is always the last. But to be honest, without output management, you cannot print the invoice and get the money. So it's really good to think all about these things through the whole process and understand that if your process design and your ERP design is well prepared on the beginning, and you align the data together with this design, so you are always designing your final result amongst the real data, you're using your real business value, which the people recognize and can really test upfront what will be the result in your system, you can save a lot of hassle. And when I mentioned there's the fifth horseman of apocalypse this year, is that you can see the A and the I. And that goes again far beyond the business needs, because the AI is working with the data and the output is always as good as the input. So if your data are not ready and they are dragging a lot of historical things which worked 20 years ago but not working today, you can also have the problem with the future proofing. So this is the reason I really recommend and stress out that if there is something I would like to take from this webinar and put it on your table as an experience or let's say information, it would be the data really matters, and it will matter even more in the future. And everything which is built as of today is built about the data. So also, why does understanding and cleaning the master data matter in the future? Because when you're building the business, you're working with your products, and your products are represented by the master data. And understanding provides a better data selection. So what you can do during the data migration, you can reduce the volume you have. You don't need to have a supplier AZB, which is old 20 years, and the past 18 years you didn't order anything from it, and maybe it doesn't even exist. And with the migration to the new system, you have a unique opportunity to leave all your historical luggage behind and start fresh. So which means that if you want to go and explore the new opportunities, it's good to explore it as easy as you can. You don't want to be facing the same situations, the same errors, or the same reports which are showing the data which you didn't need in the old system, and you from some reason took them to the new system. So cleaning up upfront reduces the migration time, cost, internal resources demand, plus improves the future data quality. So now you see that we start talking about the data and the volume and how they matters. All of a sudden, we can influence the overall positive impact on the system, on the project, on the people, and also on the possibilities that you create something which is future proof. And also it improves the implementation progress because as the complete delivery team is working with the real, relevant, and correct data since the day one, there is a really small space for the errors because you didn't test your integrations, your output, and everything on your real data. Which, trust me, that's what is happening. That very often that they are taken some sample data which are not the real one. Everything is designed, and in the end, the reality is a bit more difficult. So name the land. I believe that's the most important thing. It doesn't matter if you go from one system or multiple systems, but identifying your future migration landscape, that's where I recommend to start with, even though you start with the whole ERP project or migration project to cloud. It's good to know what you are taking, from where you are taking it, and make sure that you are having a tool and a methodology how to, in a process way, have everything documented and done. What I will try to talk about today is that there is a there's a lot of experiences and a lot of examples I would like to show you on the way how we do it. And it's not that that's the only way how to do it, but it's something we can really in reality be able to describe the benefits and the differences which you as a customer when you are migrating to the new system can see that this where the challenges are coming from. So what we do is that we are having so-called mapping tool methodology, and we are having validation tool which basically helps to narrow down the multiple systems which are the inputs to be able to comply with the final destination, which is at this point the M3 Cloud Edition. And the data migration differs widely, and we are distinguishing four basic models. We're basically saying you have a standard one-to-one migration, you are on existing M3 on-prem version, and you want to go to the cloud. And it's very easy. You are having a data and you want to move them to the new system. That's straightforward. Uh, it's application of common method. That's very often when the Infor is very helpful, and they are having the Infor migration factory, which is very proven as a concept that you are having a version of M3 which is very similar to cloud, and it makes sense to just expand the data in the way they should be. But that's not everything. Sometimes you are having multiple legacy systems, or your data need to be during the construct phase changed. You need to change the mapping, you're changing the divisions, the names, the prefixes, etc. And also there needs to be done a lot of uploads the data as is because you are prototyping, you are changing, and it's a continuous development process. So you need to be more flexible. It's not that here is the data and I move them from left to right. You need to be more flexible to be working, iterating, etc. Then there is another approach where you need to be scaling because you are acquiring new companies. You have been growing up, or maybe in the future, you know, you will be acquiring new companies. So there needs to be something which can cover the global projects, can have the same source but different expectations, can be multiple countries, etc. And the common goal is to be highly efficient, be highly consistent, and have a huge amount of the control of what is really getting to your system even though it's getting from multiple sources. That's very important. So the scaling matters. And the last thing is that the four real case scenario I'm seeing during the migration project with the Columbus team is that there's also need for automations. There can be uh, one country with one system, and then there can be the low complexity of the data, but there's a huge amount of locations. There can be thousands of locations, and you can't really do it manually because you need to do 20 of them every single month or every single week. So even though it's fully repetitive, that requires a lot of attention for the precision. So you can't really do it manually. So there is a way how to also automate this, which means that you can change just a few variables and you can migrate more locations. And these are four, I would say, most common cases we are seeing through the projects we are doing as a data migration team. And all of them are a bit different, but they are not different in the final destination system. That's always the new M3 cloud we're talking about, and we would like to get deep dive into it a little bit more. So because the data migration is complex, it requires a unique approach. As you are having the ERP implementation side, you are having the budget, the timeline, the milestones, the resources. And from my perspective, because I'm the one speaking from the data migration part, I see the data migration as, let's say, a small side project which needs to be really tightly connected to the whole implementation. Because of course, during the implementation we have the integrations and all this kind of stuff, but all the things are interconnected. But what I believe is that it starts and fails with the quality of the data. So if you don't think about the data upfront, you can get into the rabbit hole where you really start to see an issues before the go live, which you haven't seen for 12 to 24 months. So the process, the tools, the skills, and the experience really matters, because with all these things, if you invest into them in the beginning, you can really save a lot on the end, because the data migration process should be something which is highly predictable. You start with first prototype, and for the go live, you go with something which you tested multiple times. You are very confident you know what's happening, and every single users know what data they will expect once you hit the button and you're live in the new system. It sounds like a cliche, but it's not happening because the every single iterative steps very often doesn't use the same source of data, which means that in every single UAT, full scale test, etc., the users are getting a little bit different view on what to expect in the final system. So, couple of the examples we did with our customers to show you that there might be different approaches and different needs, but there might be still one common approach, one common methodology which can help you with your business grow to accommodate all of these. So we have been through the project with the parallel rollouts. It has been 30 countries requiring 150 migrations, approximately 5 migrations iterations per one country, and they had to run 6 to 8 projects at once. And as you may see, you can't really manage this having a global overview on what is happening, having being reporting everything and the progress on a spreadsheet, because one simple mistake, just changing by accident name of the column, or you did just copy paste issue on old version, and all of a sudden you are having a huge pickle when you really can't run this in parallel. So what we have done is that we created so-called the golden company, the first prototype. Then we had a common database structure which was identified, and then we basically iterated in 4 steps. We had the migration managed with dedicated local teams, but we had the global project management, which means that on the global level there was a golden company and a process set up with the support of the local people who knew the data for a specific country. And we have been able to basically move multiple divisions at the same time. And what was the magic is that with the prototype Golden Company, we inherited the setup of the company which was already in M3 Cloud. We took it for another company and we started, and even the first iteration was much faster. And then we did the same and went for Division 3. And as you may see, everything was running in parallel and everything is being able to be mapped. And this is just one of the examples, which is like you are having a high need for a lot of migrations. The second example is that you can have a phased project development because your existing system and your future approach is so different that you want to really go through the sprints to develop the new processes. And basically you're changing a lot of things, and the stone is not being on the same place as before. So we had a customer when there was a 10 sprints with the development, with monthly turnarounds and 9 migrations of the data as is from their database, because they really wanted to develop everything they want to use in the future with the system and with the data they are having today. So what we have been done, we had the different parts or groups of the data prepared to be updated for a specific sprint. We do the migration. Then there was the sprint finished. The business was doing the decision about the design. It was frozen, and we added another group of data. But the previous one was solved. So basically, with every single click of the data migration, because we has been accumulating the knowledge, we didn't need to look back, because this was already done. And thanks to the automation, thanks to the process, and thanks to the approach, which was designed at the beginning, because we knew with the customer that it's not that we will look at the data, find a solution, move the data, and it's done. We got the correct approach to be really able to doing the incremental steps. And basically, we did the iterative approach from 0 to 100. And the last example I wanted to show you is the fully automated approach, when you can have one country, thousands of divisions, thousands of locations. And basically, we did the three phases. The phase one, there was the prototype, where we did the first country in the 4 rounds. Then we had the phase two, where we had 5 locations with 3 rounds. And then we had the 10 locations with 2 rounds. And then the rollout was basically 20 locations every single month, fully automated, because the data complexity was really low. And again, it's something like, if you think about this upfront, you would say, okay, I can do one country with the old approach with the spreadsheet, but the second country, I kind of do it again. But what if I need to do 10 countries at the same time? You technically need to have 10 times more available resources and or available time. But if you have the correct approach from beginning, it means that every single batch, every single phase is costing you the same amount of human time, and you are able to get an exponential growth of the number of the divisions you can move to the system. And this is something you don't really want to think about when you are already in the project and implementing and needing the data. It's good to have this really thought through on the very beginning, because as you may see, 3 different approaches, still going to the same system, still using the same data, but the process itself, what you need in terms of resources, can be very much different. And the way how we do it, and then the way I would like to talk about it today, is that there is an automated way how to do data migration. And how we do it is that it's very simple architecture. We are having an automated process which enables to get the data transformation, reshaping them from the legacy system, and harmonize them with the IPC info process catalog. And how we do it is that on the left side, you can see the source, and on the right side, you can see that is the target, that is the M3 cloud. And you can be using multiple different outputs, but it's very important that you are keeping the core, which is managing the most. So what we do is that we are really having this in a way that we take all the data, we harmonize them, we reshape them and map them and translate them into the final version you would like to have in the system. And we do everything on a staging server. And it's done in a way that you want to do all these transformations before you go to cloud. And as you may see, the requirements can change, the naming convention can change, and you don't want to be always doing this stuff manual. So what we do is that we have a server, we're having the scripts which are doing the transformation. For example, alt their zone payment, which are 30N, and you want to rename all of them to N30. Well, technically, it's a very simple logic you can describe. So why to do these things manually when you can describe the logic? And since the day one, the system knows exactly what to do when you do the first migration and the last migration. And this is basically approach we are recommending to the customers, to not do the things manually, because you can do it very easy on the first time. Maybe it's shorter, but do it vice versa. Invest more on the beginning and save the most on the end, because what I believe is the go live weekend is what matter the most. This is where you will be stressed the most, you will have the resources being fully utilized, and you really don't have any margin for error. So this is the way how we can really make everything multiple times. And because you've seen it already 4 times, you know what to expect the fifth time. And that's what where the methodology is basically based on, because we want to be sure you can be working with something which is human friendly. You want to have something where you can collaborate online, and you want to have something when all the people can work on the same document, on the same logic, and there is no way that there would be anything lost in the translation, anything lost because there was a wrong file being saved. So what we are trying to propose is that we are having a mapping tool, an online collaboration platform where you can look on the project for the perspective when everybody can collaborate together because you don't see any sensitive data. It's live because you are working with the logic, you are not working with every single record. It's having a full audit trail change because you can see how you can work with the version 1. There was something wrong. You can see what was the last change and roll back. So you can use the script which was done before and basically do the migration again. And the last thing is that it really helps to also keep the project under control because you can see how many data has been mapped, and you can see how many data or APIs are not being used and which are really pending a business decision. So it also provides a clarity when you can say, I know exactly where the process is being stuck on and I know exactly what to look at. And another advantage of this iterative automated approach comparing to the Excel and spreadsheets and all these legacy stuff is that if you're having a logic which is describing how your data should look like, you don't need to do the migration just to get the feedback from M3 Business Engine. This is good, this is bad. Because you can describe the logic, and because we can describe what is the mandatory fields and the requirements from the business engine, well, you can have a dry run. You can see the things which can happen before they happen. You can have multiple rules which can be suited to your specific needs and basically run them against multiple companies' environments. You can have this continuously. You can have this customized to any not only M3 but also legacy ERP system you want to add to the cloud itself. And as you may see, there's another thing. If you are thinking about the data that you want to understand them from logical perspective as a complex thing, you can describe them upfront and you can also test them upfront. So it's not that you need to wait for the very tedious and long process of doing the migration run to all of a sudden realize or understand where you need to get the data fixed or what is the potential feedback from the system. You can kind of have it upfront. You can have it on weekly basis. It's very quick, and because you are from the whole team working with the same environment, you can understand the outputs. So that's another advantage where doing the more organized, automated way of the migration can provide in the initial investment a huge savings and a huge added value through the whole project because you change one thing and you say, oh, I changed the naming and I would like to see how it goes if it fixed the problem we had with this the duplicities in the system. Well, it's just one button click. You change the rule, you update the mapping, you update the script, and all of a sudden you can see every single Monday how your data is improving with every single run, even though you didn't do the migration itself, which is again saving time, effort, cost, and provides a high data quality. So, best practice process for the successful data migration, as I see it from the perspective we are doing it with the customers. It's very important to really understand your source data. And it's not only about, you know, it's a database. You need to know exactly how to get it there. What are the connection problems? What are the restrictions? Can you add the custom columns? Can you add there the indexations, etc.? And based on this, we recommend to prepare the migration model. It's very much being proposed on a source. And very often what we are dealing with is that a lot of customers doesn't have only M3. They have M3 and something else. And this something else needs to be really understood. Or we have a customer who is having legacy M3 versions and they're so far from the cloud that there needs to be done changes. There needs to be proposed a data structure updates in order to be successful. So you have the source and then you have the staging area. So you have the model, you know that your data needs to be modified to match the target environment. We know that there would be a lot of work. So automated process, there it is. We want to mitigate the manual database entry errors. We want to be sure that we want to do the validation in very fast, continuous discovery to see the database errors and to see how we're improving the time. And at the end of the day, we would like to have the upload to the target, but the upload should be really something where we know what we have been expecting for multiple times. Well, I know that it sounds very easy that everybody can make the steps, but how to make this all working together? And that's the reason I was mentioning if you have a solid methodology and a process, in our case, is the Columbus mapping tool where everything can be blended together. And you know that on beginning you have expectations about I want to be able to see the data very much as we are improving them to make sure we are going to the right direction. So in this point, we can be rerunning the validation tools as many times as possible to get the progress on your system. But it's also important that, well, my database is 20 years old, there is 5 terabytes of data, and we want to make sure that we first don't take the historical luggage we don't need to the cloud. And secondly, we don't take there the data which we don't need because you will be just simply paying for them once they're on the cloud. Well, in that case, there's also very good practice on the beginning. Think about data archiving. Really try to get rid of as much as possible you don't really need. Very often we see customers having database for more than 10 years and saying that they are using for the legal recommendation, auditing perspective, and the Power BI reporting or anything which is around their system and environment only 3 to 5 years. So the question is, why do you take everything older than 5 years to the cloud where basically it doesn't bring any value? And then there's a realization that if you don't need this, and there is a way how to not take it with you, so you can archive it, it's still there, you can still use it for any legal reasons or auditing perspective, but it can lower the complexity, can lower the amount of the data, which means that your go lifetime can be shorter. It can lower the amount of the work all your people and the resources needs to do with the data because they will only go through the relevant data. And at the same time, everything which you saved is transferred into money. You save the cost, you save the effort, and also you have been able to make the final upload much cleaner, better for the users, better for the future proofing of the AI, and at a data mining perspective. So everybody is happy. But the thing is that it's needed to understand, as I said in the beginning, it's not just data, it's your future business value, which you want to have in the best possible shape, as much as you are designing the processes in a way it should serve your company for another 20 years. So, and that's why this should all work together. And this is basically how we are seeing the whole environment needs to be supporting this way of working. And the last thing is that you're on a cloud, you're in a new system, keep archiving, keep your data under control, keep your cost under control, and basically take all the best cases and best experiences and knowledge you had from the data migration project into the real world continuous improvement project where you can be always on top of everything you are doing in a system, including the database. And even though I'm describing this a little bit like a unique methodology with various applications, it's examples I provided today are specific to some examples we did for the cloud as the reaction to the most recent trends, but they are not limited. The similar logic is applicable on on-prem solutions using the APIs or disregard the legacy ERP type because the general logic is saying as long as you are having next to your M3 system, any other system which you can connect with the API or SQL, well, you can merge these two systems within the methodology and basically get them to the cloud. And also, it's not limited only on the API. What we are always saying, like if the customer comes to us for the recommendation, uh, and want to do the upgrade of the on-prem projects, well, the data can be handled different ways. We have more than 15 years of experience of the database level. We have been doing the migrations from the DB2, from IBM AS400, on the Microsoft SQL. And at the end of the day, as long as you can access the data in very general, standard way, which is broadly available for the cloud being connected to this database, then basically it doesn't matter if you have one system or two or three or five, you can unify them you can merge them together and you can start working with them one as one living organism. And some practical details which I would like to basically make a recommendation. Like if you would like to go for a project with any scope, any size, with any different resources in your team, I believe there should always be a standard package of questions and standard package of understanding, which should consist, among other things, of the initial data migration workshop. Always identifies the gaps and the possible problems you can have as a constraints, collaboration tools, etc. Trust me, very often it's an investment of 1 or 2 days, and you realize there is so much you can really get in a benefit from out of this. That even though you didn't fully start with your ERP project, or you didn't really have a clear vision how you would like to do all this kind of stuff, I strongly recommend go there, do this investment, spend 1 or 2 days with the team, try to get the data migration strategy on the paper, and try to also have it there in very initial phase to understand where can be potential problems also for the rest of the project. Because when you are having this on the table, even though in very draft stage, it can helps you to provide the intensive training for the tools, for the given methodology you would like to use, and prepare the people up front. You can also make sure that you are having proper access management, that everything is ready, all the servers, all the staging areas. And it's done always how we do it, ideally within your network, because everything within your network is the most safe environment. It's complied with all the security requirements, and also there is no way that the data would be mishandled because you're always working with the real live data within your real network connected to the real live testing or any other company you are using in the cloud. And also it helps to then coordinate and deliver what needs to be done. So what we do very often is that we have a project manager for the ERP, but we have the data migration technical project manager. And it's from one simple reason. The things are a bit more different when you need to talk and plan the technical detailed steps outside when the project manager says, we need to have a data migration at a week 5. But it means that you need to have your settings of the environment ready, all the companies and all the users ready. You need to have the fresh, clean database. You need to have a test company. You need to have the connection to this test company. You need to validate that your data are ready for the migration. You need to have a specific time for the migration. It doesn't happen within an hour. You need to make sure there's time for the validation, and also there's a time for preparing the business team that the data are okay to be used for the SIT, UAT, FST, whatever you call it. So as you may see, data migration is not just one tick box in the project itself. It can be 5 to 10 steps, which are very important in the sequence and are very important to be in detail, being overseen by somebody who really understands how the technical things work. So what we usually do, we put there a technical migration project manager who helps to oversee this. And that's also important to understand where does your resources are at. If you're doing multiple countries, does your global resource understand all the data? Or it's more about that your global resource will have the strategy, but you need to be sure that every single country is having a local team who is supporting the knowledge of the business data. So all of a sudden you can realize that you have a methodology, you have a tool, that's great, but you never told the local people that this is what they will use in 3 to 6 months from now in order to save as much time as possible. So, having this also in mind, that the local teams can help you a lot with the specific business data value and description, and giving having them on board very soon on the game can help you to reduce the load on the implementation team and also be able to drive the projects, for example, with the global data team, because they understand the methodology and they know that the local people can help them. That will help you to resolve the delivery model, the remote or on site. Most importantly, also it will help you to maybe decide on the implementation process. Maybe you wanted at the beginning to have a big bang, but you realize that it's not really possible because the the variation and the complexity of the data is such a huge thing that you can't take 10 companies and put them at once to one template because they differ a lot. And that's what we see very often, that even though the customers are using the same system within different countries, they don't use it the same way. They are not having the data in the same way. For example, a very good experience I have is that same system for a customer in China and Europe, but China had the Mandarin language specific letters, and there was the Latin letters. They used the customers exactly the same way, but because they had the need for two different descriptions, two different namings, all of a sudden it was a huge modification. You couldn't just take them and move them there. So they decide that it's better to do it in a phased rollout rather than take all the companies and put it at once, because it was not really possible. The data were not that easy to match. So these are like the practical details where I personally go with the customers implementation team to understand where we are with the strategy, what tools we want to use, what is the necessity for the future access, who is going to lead the whole process, is it going to be globally, locally, are you needed every people on site to explain and train them, or does it mean that you want to still go for the big bang or rollout phase project? So very often when I'm presenting this to the customers, they're saying, so does it mean that the data migration should really be the thing deciding how we do the project? The answer is no, but I believe it should be taken into consideration. It's so vital that it should help to decide on the best possible approach to make sure that you are not having the best in class business processes, but the business processes are really creating the business value you are expecting with your data. So that's my recommendation. Your data represents your company, your revenue, your knowledge, your know-how. So this will also help you to use them in the best possible way to make you successful. So we're getting to an end, and I prepared some exercise with the three golden rules of data migration. I was saying, gain understand your data history and the context of your today needs. What you needed for 20 years ago doesn't mean you will need to have it for upcoming 5 years. Very easy. Schedule and execute regular validations. Well, really, the validations are, in my opinion, the things which are really helping to also get the confidence that the project is moving in the right direction. The people are very happy to see there's a lot of green columns saying this is okay, rather than seeing, oh, there was a million records which were not okay. Do it before each data migration iteration can save you a lot of time, a lot of hassle, especially on the discussions on the costing and the finance. Because if you miss something in the costing and evaluation, well, the finance will tell you, we don't like this migration because it doesn't fit, we need to do it again. Well, you can kind of prevent this. And the last thing is more like a long term perspective. Continuously review your data with the business process owners. You really need to reflect the ERP strategy changes. What you are using today is not the same in the 5 years. What the amount of the data you have today will most probably exponentially grow in another 5 years because you are a good company, successful and growing, which means that what you see today and plan today upfront, well, this can change in a year. You can acquire a new division, you can acquire a new business, you can have a new big customer. So what you have been planning from 26 to 29 can rapidly change in 27. So it's really, really good every single year, maybe often, just to revise, does the strategy with the data and does the strategy with how we handle them still fits our need? Are we not going to be facing a huge increase of cost? Are we not going to be facing, let's say, a slow system, problems with the reporting, etc.? So these are like the small recommendations. And if these three things would be the only thing I will basically be able to share with you today and you will remember it and maybe keep in your mind, I will be very happy because for me, the data are my passion or my life, but also the business. And I always recommend like I can see the impact of the wrong data migration on the business being unhappy and inefficient. So that's the position I'm talking about. I'm not the technical person doing this. I'm the one who is really always trying to connect the business and the technical side. And I can tell you, both worlds are having very, very valid point of view. None of them are wrong, but very often none of them understand each other in 100%. So go there, be there for the team, be there for the questions, be open. And I believe that this will be your first step to be very successful in the data migration with your new ERP systems, which I always see very exciting. And I always recommend that it's better to be ready for the future than to be facing the problems because you started too late. Saying that, that will be everything from my side. I will be moving right now to the venue chat and I will try to see if there are any questions. So I'm refreshing it and I will stop the sharing the screen right now because I would like to see the questions and what is basically happening in the chat. So I will try to refresh it and let's see if there's anything going on. If there would be anything which would come up on your mind, please write it there right now. I will be happy to respond. If there will be anything you need to think more about, for example, until the end of the day, you need to get a coffee, please don't hesitate to send me the email and I will be very happy to address it. So I will give it a minute just to see if anything pops out. And if not, I will be wishing you the very nice rest of the day. Enjoy your lunch if you're in the US time zone. If not, enjoy your snack if you're in a different time zone. Good. Thank you for the positive messages. I'm very happy. As I said, it's not only about there's a holy grail how we do it, but thanks to the experiences we have, there is so much we would like to share with you. And if the only thing you would maybe take as another input from this presentation would be that you have seen any situation you don't want to be facing with your team with your data migration, that's the best. You don't need to always know what to do and how to do it, but it's also too important to understand what you don't want to be facing and what are the situations you want to avoid. And that's also, I believe, a very valid point of view. Okay, so saying that, I don't see in the chat any questions. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for being here with me for 49 minutes. And if there will be anyone who is visiting the Muga event in March, I would be very happy to see you there in person. So have a nice Tuesday. Bye.